Picture the most famous villain origin story Hollywood never made. A beautiful woman, a powerful man who wrongs her, and a punishment that falls on her, not him. Sound familiar? It should. Except this isn't a movie. This happened. Or at least the Greeks swore it did, nearly 3,000 years ago, and her name was Medusa. You know the ending already. Snakes for hair, a stare that turns men to stone, a monster slain by a hero, her severed head used as a weapon. That's the version that survived. That's the version on the coffee mugs. But the beginning? The beginning is so much darker and so much sadder than anyone tells you. Let's rewind. Before the snakes, before the stone, before any of it, Medusa was born mortal, not a monster, not a goddess, a woman. And by every ancient account, she was strikingly beautiful. Her hair, specifically, was said to be her finest feature. Long, dark, and admired by everyone who saw her. She served as a priestess in the temple of Athena, goddess of wisdom and war. That job came with one absolute rule: purity. No romance, no marriage, no exceptions. Then Poseidon showed up. Poseidon, god of the sea, easily identified by the trident he never puts down, took notice of Medusa. And what happened next depends entirely on who's telling the story, which is exactly the point. The ancient poet Ovid describes Poseidon assaulting Medusa inside Athena's own temple. Other versions soften it into a seduction. But here's the detail almost every version agrees on. Whatever happened between them, it happened in a sacred space that Medusa had sworn to keep untouched, and she did not get a say in it. So who got punished for that? Not Poseidon. Athena was furious. Not at her fellow god. You don't cross a god who outranks the priestess who serves you. But at Medusa, for defiling the temple. Never mind that Medusa hadn't chosen any of it. Athena's response was swift, and it was designed to be permanent. She transformed Medusa's famous hair into a writhing mass of venomous snakes. She cursed her face so that any living creature who looked directly at her would turn instantly to stone. The most admired woman in the region became, by design, the one thing no one could bear to look at. Take a second with that. The victim was turned into the monster. The one who suffered the crime became the punishment. If that twist feels uncomfortably modern to you, you're not wrong. The Greeks were telling a story that's been retold in every era since, just with the names changed. Medusa was exiled. She ended up living on a remote, rocky island with her two sisters, who were already immortal Gorgon monsters from birth. Medusa was the only mortal one of the three, which meant she was also the only one who could actually be killed. That detail matters. Keep it in your pocket. For years, Medusa lived in isolation. Anyone who wandered onto that island and made eye contact never left. Not because she hunted them, because simply existing near her was lethal. Imagine the loneliness of that. You can't look at anyone. No one can look at you. Every visitor who stumbles in becomes a statue in your front yard, whether either of you wanted that or not. And then Perseus showed up. Perseus was a demigod on a mission. A king had tasked him with bringing back Medusa's head, mostly as a way to get rid of him. Perseus had a serious problem. How do you fight something you literally cannot look at? Fortunately, he had help. Athena, yes, the same goddess who cursed Medusa in the first place, gave Perseus a polished bronze shield to use as a mirror. Hermes lent him winged sandals. Hades tossed in a helmet of invisibility because apparently everyone wanted this monster dead except the monster herself. Here's the part where I'd expect a dramatic sword duel. There wasn't one. Perseus crept up on Medusa while she slept, watching her reflection in his shield the entire time, so he'd never make direct eye contact, and cut off her head in a single strike. She never saw it coming. Literally. And from her severed neck sprang two creatures, Pegasus, the winged horse, and Chrysaor, a warrior holding a golden sword. Both were, according to the myths, children of Poseidon, which means the god who assaulted her in that temple was, in some strange mythic sense, still tied to her body at the very moment of her death. The Greeks weren't subtle about their symbolism. They just trusted you to catch it. Perseus didn't waste the head either. He used it as a weapon for the rest of his journey, turning enemies to stone whenever he needed an edge, before eventually gifting it to Athena, who mounted it on her own shield. The goddess who cursed her wore her face into every battle afterward. Sit with that one for a second, too. Now, here's the twist most retellings skip completely. In later Greek and Roman art, especially by the classical period, Medusa's face stopped being drawn as grotesque. Artists began carving her with a strange kind of tragic beauty, sorrowful eyes, a calm expression, almost mournful rather than monstrous. The image known as the Gorgonion, her severed head used as a protective symbol on shields, doorways, and temples, wasn't meant purely as a scare tactic. It was an apotropaic symbol, meaning it was believed to ward off evil. Her face, the same face everyone feared, became something people hung on their front doors to keep themselves safe. The victim became the guardian. There's something almost unbearably human in that. Medusa didn't choose her curse. She didn't choose her exile. She didn't even choose her death. She was asleep for it. And yet, centuries later, people were carving her likeness above their doorways because they trusted her, of all mythological figures, to protect them from harm. Modern reinterpretations have leaned hard into this. Feminist scholars and artists over the past few decades have reclaimed Medusa's story specifically as one about surviving assault and being blamed for it anyway. A pattern that, uncomfortably, still shows up in courtrooms and comment sections today. That's not a modern invention layered onto an innocent myth. The bones of that story were always there, sitting quietly under the snakes and the stone, waiting for someone to actually look. So the next time someone brings up Medusa as just a monster, just a don't look her in the eyes horror villain from an old story, you'll know better. She was a woman who was punished for someone else's choice, exiled for existing, and killed while she slept. And then, somehow, she became a symbol strong enough to guard temples and shields for the next 2,000 years. Picture the most famous villain origin story Hollywood never made. Except now you know it wasn't a villain origin story at all. It was a survivor's story. The Greeks just never called it that out loud.